see we're doing a tremendous amount in the unaccompanied housing or barracks space for both the Navy and Marine Corps. And that persists across the broader Department of War for all services. And so whether it's through traditional appropriations and kind of what I'll call our traditional program objective memorandum or POM, and spending and investing dollars through our normal budget process, and then also the reconciliation bill that was passed over a year ago, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. A lot of the defense money included specifically in that was for barracks and unaccompanied housing. So that's been another injection of cash that we've seen across that portfolio. And that's an interesting one where there's a lot of new authorities. And it's interesting to talk to my service counterparts about what each individual service is looking to do to choose to tackle that problem. I think the problem set's similar. Hey, we want to make sure our sailors and Marines, airmen, have good housing to live in, particularly those that are junior and being asked to deploy and perform warfighting as our nation needs. And so making sure they have a place that they can call home once they're off duty is super important. But there's a lot of new authorities in that realm. So like I said, where there's traditional kind of standard projects, we've also gotten a repair by replacement authority specific to barracks and unaccompanied housing. You can essentially use operations and maintenance dollars to perform a MILCON-like requirement, so do a new replacement. And then privatization, and specifically I know the Army's been kind of leaning forward on that, right? So hey, should we look at privatization of not just the infrastructure, but just the overall management of housing and barracks? So a lot of different opportunities out there. I think each service is kind of paying attention to what each other are doing in that realm. But I can tell you we're investing a lot of money in that because it's a priority for us. Anyway, so I look forward to today's discussion. You're a tremendous part of what we do, and really when people look at NAVFAC and say, hey, what's the value add you bring to the Navy? It's our acquisition capability, right? But if I contract and nobody's on the other end of that contract to deliver the capability, then that's not very valuable. So you're a huge part of our team and what we bring to the broader Department of Navy and Department of War.
All right, well, you can keep the mic a second, Dan. One of the themes that we've seen yesterday and today, I think, has been the efforts by the federal government to improve cost and schedule performance on construction projects. And I'd be interested in hearing a few of your brief thoughts on what NAVFAC is doing along those lines.
Yeah, so a lot. So I'll start with what I'm most intimately familiar with, just kind of based on my job assignment. And our moderator knows, I think you probably signed this instruction, so you're familiar with it. But so, at the field office level, we're very focused on what we call post-award, right? So the contract has been let, we are in active construction if we're focused on that type of capability. And throughout my entire career, right? So my education is an engineer, our early assignments, you're really a project manager your first few tours, and so you're directly assigned oversight of individual projects. And so I grew up in that world. And we've always, at the installation level, done, worked with contractors to understand, hey, is the project on schedule, within budget, and are we meeting quality standards? And so that's, pretty common across all installations. I did that when I was a junior officer, and we, would have weekly production meetings with our contractors. What we've implemented more recently is a more structured kind of tiered leadership involvement in those project investments. And some of it's, not every project's equal, so this is a little bit more focused on those that are either of higher value or could be of higher importance just from a mission perspective or customer interest, and making sure leadership is involved in those updates. So we'll call it a governance structure in our post-award, and so there's 3 tiers to that. We have our PLT, our project level team, our senior leader team, which is really the 06 level, so I participate directly in that. And then certain projects have executive level governance, right? So that's flag officer governance for on the NAVFAC side. So my boss, Admiral Jorge Quadros, who sits in Norfolk, attends those regularly. I don't know how he finds the time sometimes, but I'll participate with him tomorrow. We've got our quarterly ELT for our P114, which is our Milcon project for the new hospital at Walter Reed that Clark Construction's constructing. So anyway, so we've implemented that. We've been doing that pretty regularly and standard for a couple of years. So we've made improvements to that process. And I would say from a both cost and schedule, as I talk with industry, and I'm always interested in your feedback, what I've found on the post-award side, and this is pretty specific to our construction contractors, is what really drives cost and schedule, where we get off plan, is changes. And so we have done a wholesale kind of pivot to swarming change management as best we can. So we had taken internal metrics. We had data systems where we collect data. We had about 5 years of data and looked at, hey, what is our average duration from, okay, a prospective change is initiated until a contract modification is established. And it was not great. Our average was 89 days across the command, and that was better in some locations, worse in others, and that was average. We had some instances where it was much worse than that. And so if you look at, you know, that kind of uncertain period, right? Maybe a contractor's working at risk. Maybe we haven't given them a decision yet. Those things both impact cost and schedule tremendously. Schedule definitely, but then also, you know, cost from that perspective. So on the post-award side, we've really focused on change management and trying to institute a culture where we elevate issues much quicker. So a lot of times those changes, what's required is a decision potentially above the project level team. A lot of times it requires money. And so we're able to use that governance structure to openly discuss what are the issues, what do we need to get to a decision on, and that those venues we have all stakeholders available and attend the meeting, right? So that's the NAVFAC team that's kind of managing the contract. That is the contractor that's participating. That includes our A&E firms, right? If they're supporting, which they often are, and I'll come back to that in a second. As well as our end user, right? So and the bill payer, because it's not always the same people, right? It might be in the same chain of command, but it's probably not at the same echelon. So understanding, you know, who's necessary and who has the authority to make those decisions. The governance process is to flush that out, get to decisions quicker, keep the project progressing, and stay on, you know, within cost and schedule timelines. And if we're not, highlight that risk. So I think a lot of what I end up communicating out of those meetings is there is risk on the horizon, or we have already realized risk, and here's what will happen if there is indecision. I'll come back to the one A&E comment and then pause for a sec. I've had some discussions with A&E firms lately, and they're like, hey, how can we better bring value to what you're doing? How can we, get more work, right? I get this too, right? I understand you're motivated by, additional work, which brings profit to be able to pay your folks. We had already been trending towards increased design build contracting methods. That is only going to increase. We are going to pivot almost solely towards design build in the future based on guidance that's forthcoming. And so having A&Es that are very active in that change management process during the construction phase of the project is crucial for us. It's become ultra critical. I feel like every governance meeting I've attended, there's a question about, hey, there's some change, and we almost always have to refer to the designer of record. Well, what's their position? Is this okay? Can we get their input? And so they're on the clock too, right? So we've definitely noticed, I would say, an increase in that, or maybe that's something that I did not recognize until I had to personally, kind of participate in these governance meetings as much and as regularly as I have been.
All right, well, thanks, Dan. Colleen, I have a similar question for you, but I'm going to focus a little bit tighter. The Coast Guard has implemented a contracting and delivery approach called Accelerated Design Build to Budget, and I'd be very interested to hear how that pilot's going. And I think for the folks out there, understand for industry, how that changes their risk profile and how they can help support the Coast Guard as you're working towards innovative delivery approaches.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about shifting our mindset to act like business operators, and if we need to drive our speed of execution, the accelerated design build to budget pilot is exactly what it looks like in practice for us. So that traditional way of doing business of a design bid build forces a hard line between design and construction, like you talked about, Captain, which accidentally bakes in a lot of risks and supply chain delays before we've ever even put a shovel in the ground. As we call it, ADB2B, or Advanced Design Build to Budget, changes that dynamic for us. At the core of it, there's an initial dedicated phase which strictly focuses on the design and the risk mitigation throughout the project. By bringing the builder to the table early and immediately in the project, we're able to build our design around something that we know covers risk, that we know is the industry leading standard in that region or location, that we know has thought about the logistics and the supply chain and the delays, and that we know together, we and the builder or our contractor has agreed is the best thing to do to meet our requirements at that site within budget. It also helps us mitigate those long lead supply chains, particularly electrical components and marine grade materials for our piers, our wharfs, and things of that nature. The earlier we can decide on those components and get them ordered while we figure out the rest of the design and start construction helps us move the project along. It also helps us with our contractors knowing permitting, NEPA, things in that region, things in that state, helps us mitigate all of those things. So together, partnering with our contractor, making sure that we both agree this is the best path going forward, mitigates a lot of risk throughout the project. And this is a new concept to us, but it's not just on paper anymore. So we've recently awarded 3 major projects under this ADB2B model. We awarded a $200 million recapitalization of Station South Padre Island in Texas. We awarded over $400 million of work at our training center in Cape May, New Jersey. And we recently awarded $230 million to build out the shoreside facilities in Charleston, South Carolina. We're super excited to capture lesson learns from these projects and kind of move that through some future industry days to make sure that we're going about the rest of our projects in the right way. But we see this bringing substantial schedule savings, as well as making sure that our facilities are designed and aligned with what industry is best equipped to provide for us. I do want to say, though, to our AE partners out there, we still need you guys too, right? The rise of ADB2B does not mean that our traditional tools in the AE NMAC are going away. While these accelerated design build projects may be going through our construction NMAC as our primary source of work, we are going to rely heavily on our AE partners for other projects that are still in a traditional design bid build method. We're also going to rely heavily on our AEs for critical feasibility studies, the design and sustainment of our maintenance projects, owners' representative contracts, and vital AE work and planning to support a lot of our investments. So we see this as a very powerful tool in our toolbox to buy down our risk and move faster, and we're excited for industry to come along on this ride with us.
All right, thanks, Colleen. And time check for the team here. We got about 20 more minutes, so we got to finish when it's 10 minutes up there. So I'm going to give you guys one more question. If you guys can limit it to 5 or 7 minutes, we'll get an opportunity for at least one question from the audience. So Dan, at NAVFAC Washington, interested in your 27 outlook. What do you see coming down the line in the next year, too?
Yeah, so increases in infrastructure. So I think, at this point, the president's budget's with Congress, right? So that's publicly available. I think a lot of people had seen, increased defense spending across the board, and infrastructure is absolutely a part of that. So we're seeing a significant increase in infrastructure spending across the Department of the Navy. And I think the interesting piece will be, right, so some of that is in what I call the base budget, and others is tied to, whether there's the additional reconciliation funding that's worked through. But regardless, either way, it's an increased investment significantly above FY26. And so the kind of the priorities I laid out earlier, we're still seeing, those priorities haven't changed. So on the requirement side, if you are able to map the infrastructure to warfighting needs and quality of life for sailors, that is that's where the majority of our investments are. Locally here for us, we've got a portion of that. We've got some larger local projects, and we try to make sure we broadcast what we see coming down the line to our industry partners. So.
All right, thanks, Dan. And for you, Colleen, I'm going to ask you another more pointed question. As many of you know, one of the unique challenges that the Coast Guard has is pretty vast geographic distribution of their shore infrastructure. And the Coast Guard is in the midst of Coast Guard Force Design 2028, where that's going to continue to be the case. And to just provide some examples for the folks out there, Coast Guard is looking at a massive geographic footprint, home porting fast response cutters in Astoria and Stewart, to building out base Charleston, Seattle, Newport, and Guam. So Colleen, what are the unique logistical and supply chain challenges you're seeing in all these diverse regions, and where do small businesses fit into solving them?
Yeah, absolutely. The reality is that executing these projects across vast geographic locations means every design is a little different, right? We can't build the same pier in Seward that we can build in Key West, Florida, and we can't build the same housing in Astoria that we're building in Guam. That's not only because of the geography and what works best in those climates, but because of the supply chain and the things that are available to build them. So executing these heavy civil and maritime infrastructure across these regions means that we need industry to help us. We need you to help us with our supply chains. We need you to help us with our designs, with what can be permitted there. As I mentioned before, kind of our two biggest pain points in materials right now are specialized electrical components and heavy waterfront materials. So as we're working through projects, as we're designing, we need to know what you can get in those areas. So we don't want to design a project for Guam that uses materials that are only built in New England, right? Because then we have to barge that all the way out to Guam. We're trying to secure these long lead times items ahead of time, but because of just struggles and the volumetric problems that we're having, we need industry to help us with these logistics plans. Where we see small businesses fitting into this, if you have that regional expertise, if you have that niche supply chain solution for us to meet our needs, help us, let us know. Find our MAC contractors, partner with them. We need you to help us do what we do, because us and even all of our major NMAC contractors, we're all struggling with capacity, with supply chain and logistics. So if you know how to do it right in an area that we're building, if you know how to do it right in a very niche supply chain, let us know your capabilities. Let us connect you with our NMACs, and let us get these designs right for the materials that we can get today in the locations that we need to build, so we can help solve that logistical chain.
All right, well, thanks very much, Colleen. We have about 13, 14 minutes left, so I got a few more questions I could ask, but I'm going to give you guys a chance to ask some questions if you have any. So if you have any questions, please step up to one of those mics and ask them. Going once, going twice. Sold to Mr. Mike Huffstetter. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Mike Huffstetter, DLR Group. Question for you, Captain Symansky. The current suite of IDIQs and MACs for the Coast Guard under DHS, they've pre-existed the reorg, they pre-existed these historic funding levels. Are you projecting, and I know on the last round of the NMAC you increased the capacity of it, but are you seeing with this new kind of environment some of the changes in authorities as well? Are you seeing maybe a driver for increasing the number of IDIQs and MACs, maybe bringing on board some duplicate contract vehicles to move forward in meeting this new demand?
So let's say right now we are heavily tracking the use of the CAPT space in each of those MACs. Our AE IDIQ obviously plenty of room. There's a $10 billion plan there, and we just awarded it. But particularly with the rest of the department using our multiple award contracts as well, we've sometimes been caught a little off guard at what the other components are putting into the CAP space. That being said, we are working through all of the funding from our reconciliation funds as well as our normal funding to kind of project when we are going to run out of space in each of these MACs. I haven't yet heard of duplicate ones going on. I think we've never been big enough to have that problem. Our budget right now is, and that's very exciting. But we also don't have a huge contracting team. So for all of you who proposed on the AEN MAC, thank you for your 4 years of patience while we worked through your original proposals to get to award. If that's any indication, we're going to try to leverage the ones we have now, because we just don't have a ton of capacity to execute the review, interviews, and all the way to award of a new MAC. So I see us leveraging everything we can out of the existing before we go and duplicate efforts to another one. But I may be wrong too. If we continue to get money through reconciliation, we will have to expand the pools of those MACs to meet our needs.
Thanks very much, Colleen. Mr. Tom Bostofka stepping up to the mic.
Thank you, sir. Hello, thank you both. So I meant to ask this question yesterday, so I know the Corps of Engineers is not up here, but ADBD, LDB, PDB, LMNOP, QDB, it would really help, and I'm going to speak DoD, if we got a DoD common lexicon of what the progressive or accelerated or advanced DB processes are going to be. Because I've been paying attention the last couple of days, I can't figure it out myself. So that's just that on the side. And then I'm sorry, Colleen, can I please ask for a clarification? Is the IDIQ that you mentioned, is it 10 years, 10 million with an M or billion with a B?
Billion with a
Okay,
B.
thank you.
Big.
That's awarded or it's coming?
That awarded, so that awarded last month. The next one that we'll see hit the street is our regional IDIQs. So those are broken down by each Coast Guard district. We've historically used those mostly for our sustainment and maintenance work. But again, depending on what cap size they put in there, we will leverage those to the best of our ability to meet our needs.
Thank you.
And I'll jump as the moderator, Tom. One little plug for our communities of interest in SAME. Tom mentioned the challenges with all of the different types of collaborative delivery approaches, different names for it, different definitions of what those terminology is. We do have a working group within SAME on collaborative delivery that provides advice to the Corps and NAVFAC and the Coast Guard, Air Force, and others. So I would encourage people like Tom to get involved with that working group, because I think that's an area where industry could come to our federal partners and help them to understand maybe some of the confusion that we have and help work with them to better define that. So I think it's an opportunity for SME, I think, to really make a difference here to help, for the goodness of all of us. Another question.
Dan, this is Todd Graham. I'm with GHD. You and the rest of the FECs over the past several years have awarded tremendous AE capacity on your SATOCs. I mean, there's billions of dollars of AE design capacity that's sitting out there. I mean, you just briefed, and all the other FECs are briefing, that DB is the way that you're going with all of your execution. So can you tell the A&Es what your vision is for how you're planning to use us in our A&E capacity outside of the design build, where we're really working for the GC and not working for you directly? Thanks.
Yeah, good question. And so some of that is, I will say, is a work in progress. I think there is a lot of energy right now in the new authorities that we all just spoke to. Hey, are the existing tools that we have a good fit for those? So I think my personal opinion on all this type of stuff is, hey, go exercise it. I'd rather do a proof of concept first and figure out what worked and what didn't. And so in general, I would say for our A&Es, all of those, kind of the commonality is bringing industry into the process much earlier. And at least feedback I've gotten from some of our A&Es is, hey, if what you need is like baseline planning, that is still something that's a capability we can provide on those existing tools. So I think we need to figure that out together. But all of those is bringing industry into the requirements process much earlier. Yeah, even accelerated design build is really just decoupling the design from the construction.